Thank you for staying. In our first story, Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia has jumped to the defense of the governing New Patriotic Party, saying the interventions by the Akufo-Addo-led government have put Ghana way ahead of most countries in the world. The country is experiencing its slowest growth since 1975, a situation that is mounting pressure on this government to redeem its pledge of transforming the lives of the citizenry. Delivering a State of the Economy address, Dr. Bawumia outlined a raft of measures that he believes will turn the situation around.
The trade balance recorded a surplus for 5 successive years, for the first time in over 30 years. We recorded surplus for 5 successive years. Trade balance was in deficit between 2013 and 2016, but moved from a deficit of 1.7 billion in 2016 to a surplus of 1.1 billion in 2017, a larger surplus of 1.8 billion in 2018, and an even larger surplus of 2.2 billion by 2019. The impact of COVID-19 has seen a reduction in the surplus to 2.04 billion in 2020 and a further reduction to 1.1 billion in 2021. Nevertheless, this is still a much stronger performance than the trade deficit of 1.7 billion recorded in 2016, which, ladies and gentlemen, the positive trade balances resulted in a narrowing of the current account deficit as a percentage of GDP between 2017 and 2019, but a subsequent widening of the deficit in 2020 and 2021 as a consequent widening of the deficit in 2020 and 2021 as a result of COVID-19. Even that notwithstanding COVID-19, our current account position between 2017 and 2021 is much stronger than that between 2013 and 2016. Improvements in the current account performance and increased capital inflows have helped to boost Ghana's international reserves. The data shows that gross international reserves increased from 6.1 billion in 2016 to 8.4 billion 4 months of import cover by 2019, and subsequently to 9.6 billion 4.4 months of import cover at the end of 2021. By February 2022, the gross international reserves had decreased marginally to 9.5 billion for 4.3 months of import cover. So in terms of gross international reserves, our economic situation is still much stronger than what it was in the 2016 period. Now we come to the fiscal balance.
National Security Minister Albert Kandapah is warning that the perception that the judiciary is biased has dire consequences on the national security of the country. In recent months, the opposition National Democratic Congress in particular has accused the judiciary of being biased against it after losing a string of cases before the courts. Now speaking during a sensitization workshop on the national security strategy for judges of the superior courts, Mr. Kandapah said, when the bench is deemed to be biased, citizens will continue to take the law into their own hands for personal satisfaction.
This is occasioned as a result of the absence of an effective justice delivery system, or delayed justice, or biased justice, is certainly a threat to national security. And indeed, when injustice abounds, particularly in situations where the bench, which is considered as the final arbiter of disputes, is deemed to be biased, citizens tend to take the law into their own hands. most times without recourse to the established systems of justice delivery. And similarly, the failure of the criminal justice system to ensure effective and expeditious trial of criminals adversely impact the morale of law enforcement agencies. It also emboldens criminals to perpetrate more crime and breeds lawlessness among the citizenry, developments which threaten the internal security of the state. If you are going to be able to address the security challenges that we have, especially the domestic ones, we need to be able to ensure that there is a judicial system that works. If you do not have a system, a judicial system that works, many people will simply take the laws into their own hands and misbehave and do what they want. Therefore, in trying to manage the security situation, it is important for us that we do get a judicial system that works. And we are all lucky that in the sub-region, we are perceived as a country where the judicial system works and where you could expect justice. If the interpretation of the law is tilted so much in our favor all the time, people will start accusing the judiciary and will not have the confidence that they need.
Now, also at the event was Chief Justice Kwesi Enin-Yeboah, who has pledged to the support of the judiciary in ensuring that the national security strategy of the country is implemented, and said judges would continue to implement the law fairly.
In the evolving global situation, where threats are manifold and diverse, this is a critical intervention that will make all of us sleep a little better at night. I wish to take this opportunity to once again commend the Minister and the leadership of the National Security Ministry for their vision and patriotism in making this possible. Of course, the Ministry alone cannot be entirely responsible for the implementation of this document. An integrated policy requires an integrated approach. In the light of this, the Ministry is today seeking to engage the judiciary as necessary partners for the successful implementation of the policy. As the guardians of law and justice in our country, I believe this is the only right, and it is only right and proper that we are fully engaged in this process. Indeed, the Ministry has previously engaged the Judicial Council and today represents another step in this journey of continuous engagement in the collective service of our motherland. Mr. Minister, I assure you, the judiciary will play its role as imposed on us by the Constitution. Colleagues, I do not think that I need to remind you of the critical role we play in the national security infrastructure. While the threats are in a state of constant evolution, one thing remains constant, and that is the fact that the law is one of the major tools that we have to use to combat them. The decisions that are taken by national security officials must be done in the light of what is lawful, and where there are conflicts between the rights of individuals and the security of the state, it is the courtroom that those tensions will be resolved. This is why this interaction is absolutely essential. I wish to urge you, therefore, to commit to this process wholeheartedly and to engage frankly and enthusiastically with officials from the national security. I wish to assure the Minister and his team that we recognize that our partnership is of key significance to our collective survival, and we will work very closely with them to ensure the success of this new integrated national security strategy.
Well, Africa has taken a giant step towards developing its own COVID-19 vaccine with the presentation of an $800,000 sequencing equipment to the Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research. This equipment will help in identifying the various genomes of the virus in Ghana to help give the Africa CDC a fair idea of the type of possible variants of the virus present on the continent to help in the development of the right vaccines for COVID-19 for Africans. Samuel Kojo-Brace has more in this report.
According to the World Health Organization, Africa's total COVID-19 cases as of today is 8,219,644, with some 170,270 deaths. In the height of the pandemic, the continent was looking everywhere for vaccine support from all around the world to support its people. This exposed how unprepared we are at dealing with such outbreaks. But the program lead for the pathogen genomics at the Africa CDC, Dr. Sophonias Tesema, speaking in an exclusive interview with JoyNews at the sidelines of the presentation exercise, explained how close we are to developing our own COVID-19 vaccines.
This will take us one step closer to understanding our pathogens in the design of diagnostics, vaccines, and therapeutics. In order to design a vaccine, we need to know what pathogens do we have. And the sequencing capacity actually gives us the potential to know, the capacity to know what kind of pathogens do we have. So this is part of the vaccine development process.
He explained how Africa devised its own strategy to increase its sequencing output.
And in our network, the University of Ghana, Noguchi Medical Research Institute, is a regional sequencing hub designed to support Ghana and 5 other countries in the region. So with this approach, we were able to increase the sequencing output across the continent. In 2020, we had only 5,000 sequences. Now we have 100,000, almost 100,000 sequences in Africa. So this increase actually came through the continental network, which leveraged the capacity that existed in institutions like Noguchi and expand that capacity with additional equipment that you saw today.
The director of the Noguchi Memorial Institute for Research, Professor Dorothy Yabuamenu, said these equipment will boost the COVID-19 research capacity of the facility.
This is very crucial. I think with the COVID, everybody has understanding of variants, mutations, and variants of concern. And we cannot wait for the virus to take us unaware. So what it requires for us is that we have to routinely continue to survey for the emergence of new variants. This machine is going to give us that opportunity, such that now Noguchi has the capacity to sequence 2,000 genomes in a week.
Reporting for JoyNews, I am Samuel Kojo-Brace, Legon.
Now, the electricity company of Ghana, Power Queens Club, has extended support to deprived communities in the Volta region. The regional branch, led by the president, Patience Amuzu, presented stationery to the Machenkwanse Salvation Army Primary School and furniture to the Wekpo Basic School. There is more in this report.
The ECG Power Queens Club, an association made up of female workers of the power distribution company, aims to promote gender inclusion and address social injustice. The Volta regional branch of the club, as part of its corporate social responsibility, donated customized exercise books, erasers, pencils, pens, crayons, sharpeners and textbooks to the Mache Nkwasi Salvation Army Primary School. The headmaster of the school, Jude Kofi Agboyu, appreciated the gesture. The team then proceeded to the Mafiwakwe Basic School in a rural area of the North Town district. The school, established more than 70 years ago, faced challenges including lack of infrastructure and furniture. According to authorities, the office of the MP provided the school with classroom blocks that were not furnished with tables and chairs. This prompted the school's management to approach the Volta ECG Power Queens Club for support. In response, 90 dual decks, 9 teachers' tables and 8 chairs were presented to the school.
I promise you, all what you are dreaming for, all what you are aiming at, you get the good strength engineers that one day they will be part of us, because I'm also an engineer as well. Thank you.
The headmaster, Patrick Asigbe, was happy about the development.
Previously, the pupils most of them had to sit on the floor, bending to write, which is not helping. So with the presentation of these decks, I think academic work of the school pupils will progress a lot, because now they can sit comfortably and write So it will be a very great impact in the lives of the pupils.
The president of the Volta ECG Queens Club, Patience Amuzu, said aside from embarking on benevolence projects, the school seeks to promote gender equality in the company.
Power Queens is the women wings of electricity company of Ghana. What we actually wish to achieve is to partner management to achieve the goals and aspirations of the company, and then to fight the cause of the women of the company so that women can be equally represented in all levels of management. And then any opportunity that is available, they give us equal chance to compete so that the vacancies are filled on merit, not by gender issues.
The Queens also took the opportunity to counsel the pupils, especially females, to take interest in science-related courses so they can become engineers, doctors, among others. Fred Kwame Asari, Joy News, Wokbui.
On to our next story, and the Youth Challenge International, a Canadian non-governmental organization, is set to train about 3,000 women in social entrepreneurial skills. The 7-year Women Empowerment Project is estimated to cost $350,000 Canadian dollars. Speaking at the second graduation ceremony of 63 beneficiaries, the YCI country project lead, Esmond Kwanzaa, said her start is an initiative to advance gender equality through creating opportunities for women to acquire knowledge and skills to start and sustain a social enterprise.
Speaking at the graduation ceremony of 63 beneficiaries, the YCI country project lead, Osmond Kwanzaa, said her start is an initiative to advance gender equality through creating opportunities for women to acquire knowledge and skills to start and sustain a social enterprise.
The first phase is for them to gain that awareness of what social entrepreneurship is. Once they gain the awareness of what social entrepreneurship is, they are able to move up to the real social entrepreneurship training, which we call the Seed Your Social Venture. It's 8 weeks training designed to help them develop their business idea using a tool we call the Impact Business Model Canvas to research the ideas and identify problems within their communities and design solutions that would address them while making money and also solving an environmental or social impact issue. So once they are done from the Seed Your Social Venture, they have an opportunity to apply for a catalyst fund. So the Head Start project has a catalyst fund for all those who have graduated to apply. And once they apply, and those who are successful, they'll be given opportunity to move to the 6-month incubation, which we call Grow Your Social Venture, for those with the funding to be able to start up and also scale up. That phase is designed to engage actors within the ecosystem, coaches, mentors, business owners who will help these young women who have had seed funding to successfully apply the resources to start up their businesses.
The Chief Executive Officer of NIV, a subsidiary social organization of NOSAC, Mohammed Okasha, reiterated the need to equip women with entrepreneurial skills.
NOSAC, NIV, I think we see this project as a shared ambition of providing sustainable livelihood means for young women in order for them to become economic independent and resilient wherever they find themselves. So we have seen social enterprise as a tool to create development in our society. They ideate, they bring ideas out for us to guide them through an incubation period of 8 weeks so that they can come out with a business plan which the final stage will invest in them by providing a catalyst fund to them by investing into their businesses, and each of them have the opportunity to receive to a maximum of $2,000 Canadian dollars just to grow their businesses.
And on that daunting note, it's a wrap for AM News. Up next, the News Review. Do stay. Welcome aboard the News Review. We dig in with Samuel Kojo Brace. Sam, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Ben.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Let's start off from that 2-hour delivery yesterday by the Vice President. He says His Excellency the President is creating a new economy, that they are trying to re-establish our economy, and that the industrial sector, for example, has grown twice of what it had done within a specific period. He talks about the exchange rate, the cedi, its depreciation and all of that. He talks about fiscal measures, a whole lot that he spoke about yesterday. What are your key takeaways before we start with the Daily Graphic newspaper, which also captures some of that?
Mine will be for the...
Are you going to the agri sector?
No. Well, that's of interest to me.
Right.
But if we take the whole citizenry, everybody is looking at how my life is being bettered by the... Exactly. Like in the past, we were told, so that's what people are looking at.
Right.
Good exposition about where we are. But the impact people will feel would be measured by their, standard of living.
Right.
So yes, the industry will be growing at this rate, agri at this rate, but how the person is measuring government is not about the figures. It is about how the person feels. So
it's reflecting, and of course that's why a lot of people say that yes, the macro economy on a larger scale, but the micro economy is important, because that's where we talk about the trickle down effect into individual pockets, into, there are times when people will say, okay, so during this regime or that regime, whether the MPP or NDC, maybe I could go out and do some and get this and that, but now you try and
so all this why people are asking, where is the leader of the economic management team? So it's good he's come out to speak. Now we know...
Don't you think it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction? Because to be honest, and not to be unfair to the Vice President, digitization and digitalization feed into the economy. But if you look at the circumstances under which he became,
the Vice President.
The Vice President. How many were they? Those questions he had for Pakwesi and Mr. Arthur.
Was it 77?
So you note that we know him specifically for a certain area.
Yeah.
Economics, guru, going to transform the economy. And you also recall something that we've done here, Araba Kumsin has had in one of her editorials, how they spoke about the economic management team. So the expectations were that lofty, that high. You get it? So some people are struggling to grapple with the fact that, whoa, we've not heard from you on the back of all of these.
Yes.
So
yesterday he painted a picture that, yes, I'm still in charge. But you see, all this while he was saying that there are things we've not done. We've not digitized our economy. So we are losing out on the benefit of that area. And so, yes, I am the leader of the economy. But once you are the leader, I'm sure you delegate powers.
Right.
So he comes across as someone who is the leader, but says, you handle A, B, C, I will handle this. Because that's somewhat of a gray area in terms of how our economy has been couched. So, yes, he's someone that eventually people called that, when are you coming, when are you coming? He's come out to speak. Now we have to dissect whatever he gave us yesterday and to come out with the nitty-gritty of it, let people understand that this is what he said and this is what it means.
And we'll do exactly that as we get into the Daily Graphic. And I feel though, just to chip in, it's interesting, that portfolio, the Vice President's portfolio, it comes with being head of the economic management.
Exactly, yes. Yeah.
You get it?
Yes.
So John Dramani Mahama was there.
He was.
We've had other people.
Pakwesi
Mahama has been in there. Pakwesi and Mr. Arthur. You realize that sometimes we try to...
Professor Atta Mills himself was one.
Professor Atta Mills himself. We had Aka.
Oh, okay, yes. Yeah.
Also in that position. But it's not always that we have someone with a background that even suits. The person is head, but not necessarily an economist.
Yeah.
But I think one of the issues why the Vice President is being taken on is the fact that he is an economist. And again, like I said, what he wrote on to his parties coming into power also made him sort of, you're an economist, you are fitting as in it there as head of the economic management team. So the expectations, again.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Because usually you would not have someone with a very strong background. I mean, if, for example, in the last election, the NDC had one, would have had Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman in there, an educationist.
Yes, yeah.
You get the picture.
Yes, I do.
So there's more on the shoulders of Dr. Bawumia when it comes to this issue. But let's look at the headlines in the papers now, starting with the Daily Graphic. Collaborate to restore productivity of marine life, President to ACP states. Then there's, we're building new economy, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia says. So like I mentioned, we're building a new economy under the leadership of President Akufo-Addo. And he said, we must celebrate our achievements, big or small, and not seek to tarnish or belittle them for the sake of politics. I wholly agree with him on that. Notwithstanding the COVID-19 pandemic, Dr. Bawumia posited that the agricultural sector was growing at double the rate it grew in the previous 4 years. The industrial sector was growing at double the rate of the previous 4 years, while the services sector had recorded a higher growth than in the previous 4 years. So mind you, he's talking about the agri sector, He's talking about industry, for example. And he said issues about the national economies and how well individual countries were handling their respective economic situations appeared to be the most important things on people's minds in recent times. And that from the man on the street to the business mogul, the food we ate, the clothes we wore, the shelter we sought or had, to the benevolence we extended to friends and family, the health of the economy was the cardinal instrument. And there again, he is completely correct because, I mean, if you look at, I was following recently, what's even the word? When people send money from abroad, Ghanaians sending money from abroad. You know, the trickle down of that, it's huge. The remittances, it's huge. And you look at the global impact and the fact that maybe things may not be as coming through like they were before. Because that's, when you look at our GDP, that's quite a component as well, foreign remittances. When they are affected because of the global situation, and we ourselves are struggling here, you see that it's quite...
It doesn't paint a good picture.
He also, you want to come in before I talk about food prices? Because I felt you might be keen on coming in.
Give me on the food.
So he said the FAO Global Food Price Index increased from 95.1 at the end of 2019 to 140.7 in February 2022, an increase of 48%, adding that the increase in commodity prices had been exacerbated by the Russia-Ukraine conflict. I think sometime in February or so, we recorded our highest rate when it comes to food inflation in the country, in the history of the country. But of course, around the same time, we had also been looking at projections, I think by the World Bank or some other institution, that the cost of food would rise on a global scale. But here, I mean, it was pretty dire.
No, yes, and you see, the people who are into grain farming, like maize, like those cereals, have been talking about the fact that there are no fertilizers on the market, and therefore, a lot of them have given signal that they would want to divert from those areas into other areas. So the bit about food prices on the market increasing will probably still be there, because I have spoken to the Ministry of Agri on fertilizer prices, and they tell me, look, we don't manufacture fertilizers here in Ghana.
Recently, they've been talking about going to Dangote. He has established...
Exactly, in Nigeria.
And I think, you see, what we lack is the foresight. The foresight. Because you don't wait. We're always reacting to things rather than
last week
proactively addressing
I was telling you
crucial
about
issues.
This petroleum hub. I think it's a project that really we want to tackle a lot of things in the country, especially with fertilizer. We have to look at it. We have to look at how we can actualize that dream as soon as practicable. Because that has...
Because the phosphate is a derivative.
Yes. And it has
of the petroleum we're producing.
And
so why are we not
there?
Though I admit, we're producing on a smaller scale. But even if you wanted to target the agri sector, are we saying we can't do that and produce enough fertilizer to cater, for... I was just looking yesterday, and it was so interesting. I was looking at just a towel, and it's combed.
Nowadays, if you say towel, you have to explain. There's
no, a towel for.
Okay.
And of course, I've forgotten whether it's combed cotton or something, but it's Egyptian.
Okay.
And I was just telling myself, even this we can't do in Ghana. Do you get how pathetic it is?
Yeah, interesting.
So basic. We're importing face towels, body towels, and all of that from Egypt, from other countries. So the very basics we can do here, we're not doing. And once we keep up like this, there's no way we're going to industrialize and catch up with the rest of the world.
That is why this government said, I'm going to do 1D, 1F. And we thought that all of these things will come off, you know. But I'm thinking they may want to take it step by step. But importantly, they opened a fertilizer plant somewhere in the eastern region. I was asking the Ministry of Agri about it, and they said, oh, that is not really a manufacturing plant. It is, you know, you bring the component from outside and then repackage of a sort. Right. So we really have to get these, you know, import substitution companies here, where we produce some things that we import locally. That is where we're able to say, okay, we have substituted ABC that we used to import, and thereby creating jobs and affecting our economy in a positive manner. So I think this whole 1D, 1F must be looked at again. We have to prioritize what we do use in Ghana most often. Fertilizer is something that we should by now have been able to lobby a company to come in here to set up a factory. Right. Our economy is an agrarian one. Now we may be diversifying a little, but still it relies on agri.
I mean, it's still one of the backbones of our economy.
And that's why it's important we need to lobby an investor to come into that area to set up a fertilizer plant.
And a lot of the agriculture we do is not even on a large scale, like you would find in the United States and Brazil, in these countries that are seeking to get up there. We're still doing the hoe and cutlass farming.
Although
a lot of the time.
Although we are improving, but yes, peasant farming is huge in Ghana. But we can still leverage on that and build our sector. It's possible, it's doable. Anyway.
Well, let me just wrap on the daily graphic. So the irreplaceable Adjwasafo, it's a thought shared there by Enimil Ashon. It's on page 7. In the middle spread, President Akufo-Addo bestows Grand Medal on outgoing U.S. ambassador. I'm talking about Madam Sullivan. On the back page, there is the Bank Hospital establishes modern dialysis unit. And I remember a story I had to do on this, starting from social media. I was you know where the Bank Hospital is? In the cantonments area. And it had been left fallow for a long time. Same that I did with the University of Ghana Medical Center. It took quite a bit, but eventually that facility was brought to bear. The final bit, and it's a sad one, former Second Lady Hajia Ramatu Aliu Mahama. She's passed. Our condolences to the family.
Okay, moving on to the Ghanaian Times. I think we've dealt a lot more on the Baumia thing, so let's move on to other stories. There will be no Doomsaw Energy Ministry Paris claim. Yesterday, we spoke to the Energy Ministry on the Pulse, and also we spoke with Dr. Kwabena Donko, former Power Minister, on the Prime News.
The one who put his neck on the line.
Yes.
That if he didn't do so within his tenure.
Sure. He was making a point that, yes, we ended it. But if we don't add on, you know, now we've added a lot of factories. The 1D, 1F has brought on a number of factories, and they are all feeding onto the grid. Now, if we don't increase our installed capacity and we rely on what we have, we may find ourselves in the situation we were in between 2013 2016, when things were so difficult in terms of keeping the power on.
I think it's interesting hearing that from him, because at the same time, you know, major brokers in that space, energy folk. I remember speaking to Andre Ejapa Mercer, the Deputy Energy Minister, who will tell you that our capacity is way more than we need. If that be the case, and I've mentioned here, and his response was not, you know, very favorable, that why don't we then fill the gap exactly through that? Industrialize, because as you industrialize, what are these entities going to feed on? Electricity. They all run on electricity.
I saw his to be like a caution. Now, whilst we try to use up the installed capacity, let us also think about adding on. Maybe it's a discussion that those in the sector can have to say, is it time for us to think about adding on, or we rather have to look at how we can utilize what we have? Let's see what we can do to avoid what we had in 2013, 2015, thereabout, because that was really,
if you asked
really
me,
hectic.
I would say that only time will tell, but in terms of our installed capacity and what we're doing with what we have, if the right measures are not put in place, who knows, maybe 5 to 10 years, we could be back into that situation again. Because we seem to fall into a vicious cycle where certain things are done. Instead of tying the loose ends, we leave the ends loose. In some 3, 5, 10 years, then you see us going back to situations. Because you remember, under Rawlings, around 1999, we had some issues to do with power.
Yes.
Before the Kufuor left, we had issues. In the Atta Mills Mahama era, we had issues.
Yeah.
So you see that it's a constant flow. And like I said, we're always failing to think ahead. Imagine Dr. Kwame Nkrumah positioning Tema as an industrial hub and saying this will sort of drive the industrial development of our country. And then he gives us Akosombo. At the time, people were saying it's a no-brainer. We don't have, our population is just about 6 million. And then look at us today.
Futuristic.
The thinking.
Interesting. Maybe the fact about him saying that within the next 2-3 years is what people will disagree with him. But let's see how this goes. Let's still stay in the power sector where ECG is giving 6 institutions 3 days to pay 8.2 million cedis of face disconnection. A bit of the story. It says 6 state institutions which owe the Electricity Company of Ghana a combined amount of 8,213,237 cedis have been given 3 working days to pay their debt of phase disconnection. According to the ECG, the Minister of Communications owe 5 million United Nations Development Program UNDP 558,014 cedis, National Information Technology Agency NITA 1.5 million. And all of these, the ECG says, if you don't pay within 3 days, we will disconnect you. Interesting. I hope that next time we won't wait for ECG to come and warn us, because we've been accusing them of not collecting the monies that they...
So now they're on a drive.
Exactly.
You remember they cited the KIA?
Yeah, they disconnected them from...
millions of cedis.
Yes, yes.
The Finance Ministry, that was an interesting one. They owed over 400,000 cedis. The Finance Ministry.
Anyway. Anyway, let's see. But I'm happy that they are doing this, because people have to pay for what you use. You know, it's
so in this latest one, the story is also captured here. In the disconnect, Communication Ministry, NITA, UNDP, others over 8.1 million Ghana cedi debt. I am interested though in the UNDP. Almost.
Anyway. Let's see how this goes. Interesting. I don't know, but since they've given them the notice that if you don't pay, we'll disconnect you, I'm sure the ACG should be updating us on how this is going. You know?
Right. Let's take a quick look at the final newspaper. Public debt, 50.1 billion Ghana cedis borrowed for 3 expenses, attracting 8.5 billion Ghana cedis interest annually. That's according to Dr. Baumia. Let's just go back there to take a quick look. That story is on pages 4 and 5. And so it talks about the fact that an amount of 50.1 billion Ghana cedis of current public debt stock, equivalent of some $7 billion, was borrowed to cumulatively finance 3 expenditure items. And he's referencing some of the borrowing that we've done. Cost of the 3 expenditure items, these are financial sector cleanup, 25 billion Ghana cedis. Mind you, this moved from around 17 billion to 21 billion to around 24 billion. Now there's talk of 25 billion Ghana cedis. Excess capacity charges to independent power producers, 17 billion. And COVID-19 pandemic, 8.1 billion Ghana cedis. So that's what...
Ben, on the banking sector clean, I think that we need to be asking questions. Why?
And I've been asking them recently because it appears we're still bleeding on the back of something that we're supposed to have mopped up. We're still shedding a lot of money.
Why what is accounting for the differences? You give us that we need 9 billion from the start, if you remember.
Right.
To clean up
even before it shot up to around 14, then 17.
And it's been jumping. So we need to be educated so we can flow with them. We need to understand what is causing this, what is bringing about all of these differences in the figure that would need to clean the sector. You know, we need to probably have a national discourse on that one. The government should open up more. Let us understand that, okay, AB was used for C and D. But if you just give us 25 billion for banking sector cleanup, what are the little ingredients of that 25 billion?
Right.
Else, you would leave people to conjecture, and that's not good.
And that is dangerous. Yeah. But just to give some, not an answer, but understanding to this, it was also mentioned that the receiver will be retrieving assets worth that sum. So of the 3 exceptional items, Dr. Bawumia said, apart from the renegotiating the terms of the IPP agreements, it is important that the receiver for the financial institutions retrieves the assets of the institutions to defray a significant portion of this 25 billion.
What did you say?
So a significant portion. How significant the portion will be, we can all conjecture. But if you look at even the flow up to this point, in terms of how much the receivers have been able to mop up, does that create a very hopeful... So these are the problems.
I was coming up to the point that we need to also look at depreciation. We are saying that they should, sell out these assets. Have we talked about depreciation of these assets?
Value and all of that.
Yes, because the car that they might have bought for 1 million in 2016 definitely cannot be sold in 2022 for $1 million.
I'm sure all those considerations.
But that's what I'm saying, that they should open up to us so that we can understand. So as a citizen, if I'm asked anywhere, I can boldly say, oh, they have said that they've used ABCD to go into this, to go in, and then when we are retrieving from them, we'll be able to retrieve A, B, and C. But if you just leave it at the fact that the receiver is expected to raise this.
And I feel sometimes that's where I feel aggrieved as a media person, because they must facilitate our getting this information so we can also pass it on to the public. The information minister was saying we should take advantage of the RTI.
Yes.
But even put in petitions and all of that, you are slapped with huge sums. And I mean, when you create that bottlenecks, it's not going to be the best of processes.
We should keep exploring it, so that the citizens will also know that, yes, we are using it, and this is what they are giving us.
Final bit from the Finder. Ramadan, acidic fruits are a bad choice to break a fast. That's what is being said here. So you would want to avoid some of those acidic fruits, the citrus fruits and all of that. If you're breaking your fast, don't go immediately for those ones. You might want to settle for other things. Because, our brothers and sisters, sometimes you would see them immediately with oranges and the rest. Not exactly the best, because you fasted and all of that, and now straight acidic content.
There's obviously nothing in there for the acid to work on.
Exactly.
So you need to eat something.
Exactly.
So that when you take in the citrus, then the acidic content can work on the food that you've eaten. That's why this one is saying that. I remember in school we're told that sometimes we do certain things and then the organisms that work on the food might think that we are eating.
Right.
That's where
so they start
comes
exactly.
So we need to watch that.
Because basically they'll be gnawing at your stomach walls or lining or something of the sort.
Anyway, Daily Guide newspaper still has Bawumia mesmerizes at economy lecture, ruffles the NDC. Anyway,
in this country, I always say that depending on which paper you pick, you can guess which slant they will give the story.
Hajia Ramatu Mahama has said sad one. Very, very sad one. The son yesterday wrote that his mother passed on peacefully.
We thank God for that.
Yeah, that's what.
May God grant her. I think they call it Juma. Is it?
Yeah, I think that's the word.
Or is it Jana?
I'm not really.
Okay, I'll check. My Muslim brothers and sisters, I'm sure they will start sending.
Great. Ministry denies 10 million cedis Galamsey confab allegation. It comes with a picture of Samuel Abu Janapo, who is the minister. You remember that I think Al Hassan Suhuini threw an allegation out there on the floor of Parliament that per his record or what things that he have in his disposal, at his disposal. The ministry spent 10 million to do that confab on getting how to deal with illegal small-scale mining. But the ministry
so Kojo Brace, we're going to sit and talk about how to resolve a major problem.
Yeah.
And we spent how much again?
That's according to him. The ministry says it's not true, that they didn't spend anything like that. I'm sure when the Auditor General does his work, would know.
Those ones, by the time the Auditor General gets there, Asemina Aseyo, Apaska. You know why I'm saying that, right?
Because
by the time the report comes out, I think has happened already.
A bit of a challenge. You see, dealing with Galamsey, I was always saying that we are not handling it well. See, if we want to deal with small-scale mining, the guys in there know how to deal with it. When they talk about let's suspend every activity, I told people in Western that, look, this is not how to deal with it. Because we know
Galamstop and all those
know that there are several sides to this Galamsey thing. We have the alluvial, we have those who go, like the pit underground. Those who go underground should not have been part of, let's stop it all at a go. We should rather have focused on water. But I mean, that's past now. But we need to interrogate this whole 10 million thing. The ministry has come out to say it is not true. Let's do a bit of a better work on it to understand how much did they use for those confabs that they did. Because I remember they went to the Asankragua area to do that, because that's a Galamsey haven. They did one in Accra here. Let's understand how much went into all of that and what were the outcomes. Right. Because I know during the era of Charles Bisu and Professor Frimpong, I think they had a document, the MMIP, right, which was about dealing with Galamsey. What happened to that document? What happened to the roadmap?
What happened to the document? What happened to the people in charge? Whom we saw in some instances, engaging in certain activities
we sent people to
that were contrary to their portfolios.
We sent people to UMAT to be trained in drone operations, on how we can use drone to tackle the menace. We did a lot of training for people.
Can I tell you something?
Tell me.
We can regulate small-scale mining. Or Galamsey in the country if we wanted to. You know why we are not?
Why? Tell me.
Because the powers that be in many sectors and across different portions of our political spectrum have their hands, their feet, their heads, their stomachs in there. It's like the bit about Rosewood.
Yeah.
Their fingers are in there. They will keep telling you we're doing this behind the scenes. They are the same people. Where are the excavators? Our excavators, where are they?
But you see, I'll be shocked if indeed these people are part of those who are funding people to be mining in our water bodies.
But some of these people, it has been said, even when we've spoken about the menace of some people, and I don't like using that Fulani word point, but sometimes we lump all of them together and say that entire menace sometimes that we see. A lot of our people have cattle, like large herds of cattle, and they employ these same people to fund for them. It cuts across, whether it's Galamsey or whatever.
The point I was making was that, look, if you are a leader of a country, or you are part of those who are leading us,
right,
and you are patriotic, you don't do things that would put this country in jeopardy. You know how we are suffering to give people water to drink today?
Right.
If you should go around asking people in their homes, how long have you gotten water from Ghana Water Company?
You should ask me.
Oh, okay.
There was a period I went for months.
You didn't get water?
Without water. And nowadays, even if it will come, maybe once or twice a week, maximum. You must harvest as much as you can, because else...
You don't know when it will come.
La finish.
So that is why I said, I'll be shocked indeed to find out if these people who are supposed to ensure that you give us solutions to our needs are the same people who are funding people to say, go into that water body.
Samuel Kojo-Brace, I think you know better.
And to mine it.
We like to talk, but walking the talk and feeling the pain. That is why I know that.
That's why the Small Scale Miners Association is somehow peeved. Right. Because if you want to tackle small scale mining, I think your closest ally should be those guys.
Right.
They can help you deal with it.
But it boggles my mind. You have laws. You have regulations.
Look, Ben.
It's merely about implementing them to... We can even have foreigners. Do you know the number of foreigners in our country from the West African sub-region, from outside the sub-region, from the likes of China? I mean, milking our country through illegal small-scale mining. And then we organize something, we shoot a few things down. What are the names of those? I've just forgotten. And then we celebrate it. What have those programs ended up with?
Ben, when I was in ATLFM, Cape Coast, there was this research we were doing. We wanted to find out, we're doing a documentary, so I wanted to understand...
The Shangfan, it just came...
Oh, the Shangfan.
Shangfan and the rest.
Whether we have laws for certain things, I tell you. The sort of laws I realized Ghana has. I was like, wow.
I think in the world we have the best laws and the worst implementation.
Exactly.
Best laws, worst implementation.
That is our problem. That we have laws for everything in Ghana, but when it comes to making sure those laws work, That's where we have our problem.
All right.
Interesting, yeah.
Keep faith with NPP. Baumia tells Ghanaians that's in the Ghanaian Publisher. And to wrap with the BNFT, Sanitation Minister assures Jospon Group of government support, and we will weather the storm. A Veep upbeat about economy. And Bank of Ghana warns against unauthorized forex trading. Final headlines you want to share with us?
Well, the statement, there's something here from the First Lady.
Right.
And I like Mrs. Ekufuado. She says, Ghana can rise above our challenges, inspiring us and motivating us that, look, we can go beyond where we are today. Let's keep faith. Anyway, we can keep faith, but we want them to be very truthful with us, so we can keep faith with them. Right.
No crano, NASM.
Exactly.
It reminds me of my alma mater and my former hall, Commonwealth Hall. You know what
I've always said UCC is the best university, so I don't.
All right. Were you in Casford? Are you a Casford?
No. I'm an Ogua Holler.
Oh, I see.
Premier Hall.
I see. I'm an old vandal. And our catchphrase, our motto, truth stands. Simple. Truth stands.
You guys, anyway, but
Charlie, Kojo, thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me, Ben.
And that's how we wrap the news review. But coming up next, we bring you sports. Do stay. Thank you for staying with us. We've started digging into our big stories. One major story today as we dilate on what the Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, told us yesterday on the back of our economic situation. Like you heard him there, he was talking about some flagship programs. And he says basically the fundamentals, economically speaking, still remain strong. But how do you feel that in your pocket? Joining us for that conversation, Professor John Gachi. He is Dean with the UCC School of Business. He joins us for a conversation. We'll have others also join the fray as they share their thoughts. We have Dr. Patrick Esuming as well, economist with the University of Ghana Business School. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you, Dr. Gachi and Dr. Esuming. Professor Gachi, I beg your pardon. Professor Gachi and Dr. Esuming.
Good morning.
Right. All right, so let's start with your analysis, general overview, briefly, of what transpired yesterday in that 2-hour event where the Vice President was talking about all angles, or many angles, aspects of our economy, from the agri-sector to industry to flagship programs to banking. And he says there are 3 major things that have been a draw on our economy, citing the cleanup, the banking sector cleanup, dealing with COVID-19, among others. But from where you sit, Professor Gachi, what is your general overview of what the Vice President told us yesterday?
Thank you. Well, I think the Vice President was working within a certain context. The context is that respected international organizations such as World Bank indicated that the economy of Ghana was going down before COVID-19. Therefore, dispelling the continuous engagement with the Ghanaians that the economy is as it is today because of COVID-19. And other prominent Ghanaians, some of whom handled the affairs of this economy before, also came to buttress that point. So it's as if the government ought to correct that impression. And that was the essence in one part of the lecture yesterday, to create the impression that everything was rosy, except that COVID-19 and Russia-Ukraine crisis came to distort all. And some of the things that the Vice President indicated yesterday have been said over and over again and were rejected by many Ghanaians. Number one, I do not believe that the approach that the government took in dealing with the banking sector cleanup was the appropriate one, and that created a lot of problem for the country. If you look at the amount of money involved in the cleanup, it was estimated to be around 9 billion.
Right.
That 9 billion can resuscitate all the banks that went down. If we meant to actually resuscitate those banks. But we are being told that the amount has gone up to 21 billion.
In fact, 25 billion.
That is actually the benefit or the outcome of a policy choice by the government. And the government should not shake that responsibility. It should not pass that responsibility to anybody. The choice that the government made resulted in that. And we do not expect the government to be crying. The government should be matching the dividend of that to the choice they have made. Also bear in mind that having done so, the government went ahead to institute what they call banking sector cleanup levy. So when you do all these things and down the lane, you are not willing to take responsibility, then I wonder what leaders are supposed to do. That is problematic, and that has been rejected over and over again. So I do not think that we will accept the fact that the debt level of the country is because there is something called banking sector cleanup. It is an exercise introduced by the government. Other options were there, they didn't explore that. So I think they should own up and then take responsibility.
Right.
And then when you come to
before you move to your next point. So when it comes to the banking sector cleanup, the 25 billion Ghana cedis that have been spent supposedly, there is talk about the fact that we're going to recuperate all of that on the back of the receiver, mopping up what must be sold so that we get those sums of money back. We also know that it's not exactly panned out the way we would have expected. Are you hopeful that we'll be able to get back the half, so 25 billion Ghana cedis that we've pumped into this endeavor? How hopeful are you that we'll be able to recoup those sums of money?
No, that would not happen. I think you heard the receiver over and over complain that even some of the assets are not there. When they value the asset, even selling the asset becomes problematic. And I believe they indicated how much they have been able to realize over time. And it is nothing to write home about. So I do not think that that will be able to raise money from the realization of those assets to the tune of 25 billion. I do not think so.
Okay. So you were going to make a point. I just wanted to sneak that in so you don't forget to talk about it.
Yeah. So when you come to COVID-19, I think we all know the simplest analysis you can do is to look at the data the government has provided to IMF. In 2020, when we were going for the 1 billion facility from the IMF. And the data is very clear that the deficit of the country in 2019 was 7.5 and not 4.7 as the government keeps telling us. The primary balance was negative 1.8 and not positive as the government wants us to believe. And what that means is that in 2018, we established or we enacted the fiscal responsibility law, which pegged deficit at 5%. So if by 2019 the deficit was 7.5, what it means is that we crashed the essence of the fiscal responsibility within 1 year of coming into force. And that spelled out how, if you want to describe the management of the finances of this country, not being prudent, or perhaps they have challenges that they have to violate the fiscal responsibility Act before COVID. Of course, I am aware that there is a provision in the Fiscal Responsibility Act and also in the Public Financial Management Act to the extent that if there is a pandemic, you suspend the fiscal responsibility rules and accommodate expenditure. We understand that, but to indicate that the economy is in the situation it is today because of COVID alone, that should not be acceptable. You recall when the Vice President was speaking, he even indicated that we experienced depreciation of the currency of about 12.9% in 2019. That is equivalent to approximately about 13%. Was that COVID? Were we having COVID then? Prices of fuel was going up before Russian crisis. Of course, we need to accept the fact that these two global events actually aggravated the already precarious situation. And that is what we should be speaking to. But if a government is portraying itself to be perfect in everything and is not ready to take up responsibility for anything, that I think is very problematic. That would be my preliminary comments.
Right. Thank you for that. Let me come to Dr. Esuming now. Doc, there's also the talk about, I would like you to give your initial thoughts, but there's also the bit about the Vice President saying that we should keep faith with them, with the economic management team, and that they are going to come good when it comes to our economy. What is your general overview of the delivery yesterday by the Vice President? What are your key takeaways?
Okay, good morning, and good morning to viewers and also to Professor Yachi. Yes. So I think that in the main, the delivery just followed the scripts that we have heard before. When the finance minister speaks and then when the president has spoken, the impression, so they say that before the COVID, the economy was doing well. And then since the COVID, the economy has been in trouble. And that, the measures that have been put in place is going to help us recover from the difficulties we are in. There are just a couple of two areas where the finance minister's delivery was a little different. And that is that he presented a lot more data, including data from other places to make his case. And then we also saw towards the end of his delivery, he spent a lot more time talking about the digitization agenda, which is something he speaks about a lot. So clearly, the finance minister, the vice president admitted that the economy is having challenges, not just at the macro side. He took his time to explain that prices of goods and services are going up, prices of basic necessities are going up. And then, like you said, he says that, we should have faith in the measures that the government is taking. I think on the broader side, so first of all, when we spoke yesterday, I said that I wasn't expecting anything new. We are not going to hear any new major economic news or any major new intervention. And I think that's exactly how it turns out. So clearly, the government is saying the same message, that they believe in the measures that they've put in place, and that when, all these, when we follow through this, then we are going to come out of it stronger. I think broadly, I've said that the measures that we've had over the last couple of months are really short-term measures.
Right. And
mostly targeted at addressing government finances. So we've seen a lot of revenue measures and a lot of expenditure measures to try and then balance the books on the government side. The question, I don't think I've heard enough to address the real sector challenges. I think, obviously, the government has a lot of...
When you say the real sector challenges, what specifically are you driving at?
Well, I think, the government has about 3 or so flagship programs. Right. The Planting for Food and Jobs, the One District, One Factory, and then, some other extensions, One Village, One Dam, and other things. I think those, at some point, the Vice President explained that a lot of the challenges we have is because of a fundamental structure of our economy. And that is what we need to address going forward. So when I say I haven't heard enough about what we are going to do with the real sector, that's what I mean, the productive sector, agriculture, manufacturing, and feeding into that, changing the structure of our export versus the structure of our import. I think that is one area where I haven't heard a lot of new initiatives. Clearly, the government still believes that the its flagship programs as they stand will help us address the problems. I think we all have to admit that there has been some challenges because last week when during the SONA, when the president spoke, he made a point about the fact that we still Russia, and that is part of the problems that the Russia-Ukraine is giving us. Yesterday, the vice president also reiterated that. But then you have to question, if we have been doing planting for food and jobs for 3 years, let's give 3 years before the COVID hit, and we are still depending on grains from other places, then you have to question whether that policy has worked as well as it should have. Again, I've also said that if we knew that we are going to do planting for food and jobs for several years and we need fertilizers, and 5 years down the line, we are still dependent on fertilizer from elsewhere to the extent that when a war breaks out in a different part of the world, we are not getting fertilizers for our farmers. And I think when these problems come, and they themselves highlighted them, it has to tell us that maybe the flagship programs haven't worked as well as they should have. So we need everything. And let's not say that we cannot attribute all our problems with fertilizer to Russia-Ukraine, right? Last year, where there was no Russia-Ukraine conflict, there were problems with fertilizer supplies. So for me, I think the new measures we've had recently are really helping to address government finances. But I haven't heard enough that admits that, some of our flagship programs, maybe we need to retweak one or two things and do a few things differently so that those programs will work better to transform the economy. Yesterday, the vice president did say that transforming the economy will take a little bit of time. But, we should be in a hurry. After 5 years, we shouldn't be asking for more time. We have to admit that some things have worked, some things haven't worked as well as it should, with or without COVID, and then try and address those specifics.
For you, what are some of those things, very briefly, that have simply not worked? You say some things have worked, others have not. What are some of those things that, from where you sit, have simply not worked for us?
Okay, so what has worked is that because, the new oil field came on board in 2017, it helped to boost our growth. So you realize that there was a steep jump in our growth rate from 2016 to 2017-18. The biggest thing that happened in that period was that a new, bigger oil field came on stream. And when the vice president was also talking about how our trade balance moved from a deficit of $1.7 billion to a surplus, all of that, if you check the numbers carefully, you will notice that the biggest thing that happened is that our proceeds from oil export went up over about $1.5 billion or so. So that part seemed to have been working for us. But what we ourselves need to do in terms of making sure that we are diversifying our export, that part hasn't worked. Even though the economy has been growing, we have not been successful in translating that growth into ensuring that we are creating enough jobs, for instance. So yesterday, the vice president also did mention jobs, and I think that was interesting. But you see, in an economy like this, you can't simply focus on the unemployment number and say that we are doing well on the job front because the unemployment number is lower.
Right.
Because in an economy like this, in the labor sector, the main weakness will be found in the underemployment rate and probably the labor force participation rate. So when you simply quote the unemployment number, I don't think we are doing enough justice to the weaknesses that we have in our labor market.
Okay. Let me get to Professor Gachi. And there's also an interesting bit that comes through. Prof, it has to do with the agri sector and the industrial sector as well. According to the Vice President, these have grown twofold within the last 4 years. And that is something that, Dr. Suming also started talking about. But if we've seen this kind of growth, how has it impacted? Because like we're talking about now, agri products or things that there's a word that just skips me, but the relevant things that are needed to ensure that farmers can do what they do, like fertilizer, has been impacted just on the back of what is happening between Russia and Ukraine. We have labor costs going up as well. So when you look at these two sectors, agric and industry, and how they have supposedly grown, has there been a fair or commensurable reflection in the fortunes of our country trickling down to ordinary people's pockets?
Thank you. I think if you look at the data presented in the 2022 budget, you will see clearly on the back of the investment in 2015-2016, the expectation of about 8 percentage point growth in the economy happened in 2017. Thereafter, you see the growth rate coming down until COVID-19 set in, where the growth rate actually is 8 or 0.9%. So it is also not true that we have been growing on average 7%. If you check the numbers, you want to even factor in the average will not be the 7% that the Vice President is talking about. Now, again, when you look at all the sectors, agri, industry, services, all of them stepped down from 2017 until COVID came in. Now, again, if you decompose industry, for example, a huge component of industry is the natural resource sector. Then the real economy outside the natural resource sector is doing nothing. And the real sector ought to be looked at critically. And that is what the government is not able to speak to. In planting for food and jobs, we have not been told how industry and agri actually coordinated to bring on board new businesses, manufacturing, processing of agricultural produce, nothing. And if you also look at, in fact, nowadays, even the Bank of Ghana has stopped publishing the details of our import, and you will see that most of the items we are importing these days are not really intermediate goods. So I believe those are the areas we should be dealing with in order to ensure that we get value for the policies we are implementing in agriculture. As it is now, there is the need for rethink about agricultural policy and how agricultural policy should speak to our industrial policy and to ensure that we impact positively in the real sector.
Let's talk about something else that is not tangential. It is actually crucial when we talk about these other sectors. It has to do with our currency and its flip-flopping on the international scale. Recently, we had the ignominious title of being the worst performing currency on the African continent. But here we are, the Vice President is talking about the fact that sometime in 2014, the cedi depreciation hit 32.5% and declined to as much as down to 9.7% in 2016. Then he talks about the fact that in 2017, it hit 4.7%, which you have referenced already, before it rebounded to about 12.9%. Tie that into the fact that he is saying our depreciation woes are not owing to a financing problem, for which reason more borrowing is not the solution, is not needed. When it comes to our cedi against the foreign currency conundrum, where do you see us? Do you agree with what the Vice President is saying? Figures. And do you think our approach is the right one to stabilize our currency? Prof.
Okay, thank you. I think what the Vice President has been doing when he's talking about depreciation is to pick figures without providing the basis. Now, what we should know is that generally our cedi is a depreciating currency. But where you see significant distortion happening, then you know that something serious has happened. A serious shock has taken place, and the currency should be allowed to respond to that. So you will see erratic depreciation. He was able to explain why we are seeing erratic depreciation and basing that on the external factors relating to Ukraine and perhaps COVID-19. He was not able to explain to Ghanaians that in 2014 there was, or 2014, and again, the errors that we had, erratic depreciation, there are underlying shocks that should be explained. So the point I want to make is that when underlying shocks are pronounced, the currency will definitely respond to those underlying shocks, especially when our reserve position is not robust to tame the shock that we are experiencing. So I just want to say that those periods of erratic depreciation are responses of the currency to those shocks. And just as the Vice President is explaining Ukraine as the basis, all the years that we have those periods of erratic depreciation, we also have underlying reasons. If you take the 2015-2016 that he's talking about, you know that at a point in time, the budget announced crude oil price of around $106.3 per barrel. Within 2-3 months, it went down to $40. And then we also experienced collapse of all our major commodities, the prices of all our major commodities, to the extent that 2015-2016, we even have to close some of the mines. That is a serious development that should impact on the currency. But if you just speak and under your regime, you are able to adduce reason why we should consider it to be a normal development in currency management, you should be fair and do the same for the other period that do not fall under your regime. I believe that is the only problem about the Vice President bit. I also was not impressed because he portrayed the picture as if so long as he was able to speak to the audience that the problem we are facing is coming from external factors. It's as if we don't have anything to do to deal with the matter. But even during the period of war, the Ukrainians are assessing how their leader is managing the war. The Russians are assessing how their leader is managing the war. We should assess how our leaders are managing the turbulent situation that we find ourselves. Just blaming external factors is not the way to go.
A quick one then. So looking at how our leadership has managed, and we heard yesterday from the head of the economic management team, has handled our own economic situation. How would you rate them? If I asked you on the back of, yes, COVID-19 and the Russo-Ukrainian war and our economic, turbulence, if I asked you to deliver a rating of the Nanado Baumia Kenoforiata era, at least within this second term, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give them? What figure would you give them?
Well, as a lecturer, we don't just give grades like that. You need to follow masking scheme, and you need to consider a lot of factors. So I don't do those kind of rating.
So maybe you will not give a clear rating from 1 to 10, but what would your assessment be, briefly?
Yeah, the assessment is that many other important factors are not taken into consideration. Like my colleague in the studio said, the government is only looking at its finances. For example, as part of the measures to deal with depreciation, rising prices, and the rest, the policy rate was increased to accommodate the risk to the economy. That is fair. But you know that on the back of that, already the banking sector report, part of it indicated that over 89% of the lending that the government, that the financial sector has given went into government instrument. What it means is that just about 10% of the portfolio from the banking sector, financial sector, is available to the private sector. Then on the back of that, you reduce the cash reserve of the banks or the commercial banks to around 8% during COVID. Now, when you are restoring it, instead of restoring it to the 10%, you scale it up to 12%. What that means is that already the private sector that needs credit badly is not getting the level of the credit that they need to have.
Right.
All of them going to the government. Then at the same time, you have limited the ability of the commercial bank to move their deposit to loans to the private sector. That is counterproductive. So you are not incentivizing access to credit, availability of credit to the private sector to do the real sector work for you.
Right.
So those are the things I want to comment on instead of giving a rating.
Right. Dr. Esuming, what would be your quick reaction to that? I want you to feed in the bit about how the Vice President talks about the fact that between 1993 and 2000, as well as 2009 and 2016, we had our worst historical, in this Fourth Republic, exchange rate situation. Is that factual? And is it fair when you do the analysis, considering what, because then you see him citing specifically the tenure of former President Rawlings and also former President Evans Atta Mills leading into John Mahama. What are the dynamics in there that you see?
So the first thing I would like to say about that particular comparison is this. You know, those may be true, and that we may have had a 40% or 32% depreciation in a particular year. What the Vice President, as an economist, I'm sure he knows, is that if the currency is currently, if the dollar is exchanging at 3 cedis, and it depreciates 40%, its impact on businesses in terms of the losses that they will incur will be much lower than if the currency is exchanging at 6 cedis and it depreciates 10%. So I think when we may be focusing on all this relative depreciation and say, oh, these people did this and these people did that, and during this person's time, this is that or that. For me, those comparisons are not helpful. If you talk to any person who runs a business, who imports cars or importance, they will tell you that if you depreciate 10% at 6 cedis, its impact on your cost is more than if you depreciate 30% at 3 cedis. But it also detracts from what we really need to be doing. And we need to start questioning whether some of the things that we import are things that we should be importing. When you think about the exchange rate, even in years that we haven't seen any strange shocks, you see that we'll be depreciating in the region of 4 to 5%. That reflects the fact that we consistently import more than we export. Now, when you look at our balance of payment accounts, the current account is heavily negative. That means on the current account side, we are bringing in fewer dollars than we are buying stuff. But if you look at the merchandise, the trade balance that the Vice President referred to, on that side, it is heavily positive. So what that tells you is that the other component of the current account, which is foreigners repatriating profits or Ghanaians importing services, like when you are importing something in Ghana, we don't have our shipping lines, you have to import services. When we go and do Eurobond, we rely on the services of foreign financial institutions. When we rely on foreigners to provide insurance service for all manner of things. And in this economy, we realize that the foreign participation has gone to a level such that foreigners are repatriating a lot of profit. Foreign participation is not of itself a bad thing, but we also need to think about the Ghanaians being active participants in the economy. You can say maybe we don't have the expertise in some services, but that is why we should not be importing things like so much rice or so much sugar or so much basic things, so much wheat or grains, when we definitely have the resources to be producing those locally. So I think whenever the city sees a sharp depreciation in a short period of time, and this has always happened, not just with this current government, even in the previous government, we do a lot of firefighting to address the short-term shocks that really move the currency very quickly. But after that is done, we revert back to our type, and we revert back to doing the same things. And trust me, this is what is happening. In 2019, in January, February 2019, the currency depreciated sharply. And then we did exactly what we are doing today. We will find some short-term funds, short-term dollars to balance the books, and then suddenly the city is looking fine. But what we need to do over the long term to cut our import bill and to diversify our export, we haven't done it. Every government speaks about that. Every government understands the problem. Why it is so difficult for us to take the hard decisions to address them, I don't know. Maybe because I've never served in government. So I don't know what happens when you're in government that you cannot, you know what to do, but you fail to do it.
And it's telling that you say this from the economic standpoint, because it appears the rhetoric is always different when our political parties, the major ones, are in opposition. They say all the nice things, but when they get into power, it's something different. What do you see to be the problem? Is it because I remember in this very country, we had a former minister actually talk about the fact that sometimes their hands are tied, that they know what to do. And I'm sure you know whom I am referencing, that they know exactly what to do. I just don't want to mention his name. That they know exactly what they have to do, but there are different circumstances that tie their hands, leaving them fettered. And so they do not do these things. Is that what you see as well from where you sit?
Well, in terms of the import and export side, I think it's obvious that the traders and the importers are a very powerful group, and they have a very strong voice. So you've seen how the government has been dilly-dallying in terms of rolling back the benchmark. Because I think whenever Guta makes a lot of noise and then they send out a strong message, it appears that the government just accede to their demand. So for me, I think what we can do is to say, look, those who are importing, they won't sit down for you to take them out of business because, you say you want to do import substitution. What stops us from engaging with them so that whatever they are importing, we encourage them to be part of the domestic production? I don't know if that is something that will be feasible, because if people are importing rice, and that is their living, and you can, they are not just going to give it up easily because we want to do domestic production. But perhaps, what if we made them part of the local production process themselves, so that they know that they are not going to be put out of business. They are simply going to be earning and making profit from their businesses, except that in so doing, this time they are going to be supporting the domestic economy, and they will be producing locally and be generating more jobs. So, I mean, I don't see, because people who have been there say it, that they know they have the ideas. One or two things prevent them. Maybe it's part of the type of politics that we run in this country. That might be the constraint, because there's been a lot of political scientists have been telling us that the way we are financing our parties, it might be that there are some unseen forces that finance our parties, and therefore when they get into power, the good ideas that they may have had in opposition, maybe they feel a little bit constrained. But this is pure speculation. This is not what I study. It's not my area of expertise. But clearly, we've seen it so many times that people seem to have the idea of what we have to do, and yet when they get into power, they struggle to put it in practice.
Interesting. Let me come to Professor Gachi. We also heard from the Vice President talk about the fact that our GDP per capita has increased year on year by about 60% since 2016. He spoke about that. Put that side by side with how much we've expended on three core issues. He's talking about 50.1 billion Ghana cedis, the equivalent of about $7 billion expended on just three lines. We're talking about 25 billion Ghana cedis for the banking sector cleanup as of now, because like you know, it's moved from 9 billion to about 14 to 17 to 21, 24, and now 25. We're looking at another 17 billion for the independent power producers, the IPPs, at an extra 8.1 billion or so on COVID-19 spending. You get 50.1 billion. That is what we are being told has been spent. When you look at the two dynamics put together, are we on solid footing, spending this much on these three thematic areas? What are we not getting right?
Thank you. Well, it's just about the quality of policy choice that we have made. I talk about the banking sector cleanup cost already. It's a cost that we shouldn't incur in the first place. We should have been spending 9 billion resuscitating the banks, providing the space for effective financial intermediation. That model has been used in many countries. It has worked in the interest of the economy, but the government decided that this is the approach that they will use. So they have led to that expenditure. And it is unfortunate that is the situation. It keeps increasing. I believe by the next time that we had another lecture regarding the financial cost for the cleanup, it may go up again. So it's unfortunate that we have to dole out such amount of money for just cleaning the financial sector when other models are there we could have used in the interest of the economy. When you get to the other 17 billion or so that he talked about, again, it's all about leadership and management. Are we trying to say that if indeed we have excess power and we don't have any way around the excess power, that is poor leadership? So you don't tell Ghanaians that because you have excess, you can't do anything with the excess. That is in itself is poor leadership, is poor management of the resources that have been bequeathed. I think that is just what it is.
Right. Let me also bring in Samson Asaki Awengobe, the Executive Secretary of the Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana. Samson, a very good morning to you. We heard from the Vice President yesterday, and among other things, he spoke about inflation, talking about the fact that the Bank of Ghana's monetary policy rate was cut by a cumulative 11% between January 2017 and January 2021. He has spoken about how there was largely disinflation before the COVID-19 scourge and now the Russo-Ukrainian crisis. Did you take any inspiration from what the Vice President said yesterday in that 2-hour delivery? Hello, Mr. Awengobe.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Did you get the question?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
I got a bit and pieces of it. I'm saying good morning to you and good morning to your channel viewers and my very good friend, Dr. Ikachi. I'm sure we both know ourselves on faces on television, so we haven't met in person.
Right.
But I do really enjoy his intellectual assessment of the economy. I must say, just like I think Asase FM also called me yesterday morning around 11 o'clock to say that, okay, the Vice President is going to speak on the economy of the country, and they wanted to hear from me what would be my expectations.
Right.
Straight away, I told the Asase FM that I was not going to say anything. I was not expecting anything. I told him, what else? After the Finance Minister has spoken on the economic statement of the government, then after His Excellency the President himself had come to the August House to speak to Ghanaians and to tell the state of the economy. What else was Vice President was come to tell us? All right. What he has said. We have heard them. This is not the first time we've heard about inflation. So 11% from 2017 or 2018 till when they moved the last Bank of Ghana monetary meeting where they came out with the moving our prime rate from 14.5 to 17%, asking the commercial bank to increase to have their interest rate. Let's ask ourselves, at 11%, what was the interest rate in this country? At 14.5%, what was the interest rate in this country? cost of borrowing, and then now your governor of Bank of Ghana is now asking commercial banks to even up the increase on that 23% or on that 22% or whatever that they say. It's on paper. The reality on the ground is that if any ordinary Ghanaian goes to the bank today to say he was looking for an interest, a loan facility to go in, whether on businesses or on car loan or whatever, no one was paying 23%, 24% in this country. And that I can tell you. That's about how many 23 banks that we have. No bank was given at that low rate to anybody in this country. Even, and now of course, Exim Bank, what was the rate? It's 10%. But how many people got access to Exim Bank facilities in this country? And so when I heard that the vice president was going to speak, I thought, well, as someone would say that, okay, the vice president is now putting himself as a poster, saying that Ghanaians will have confidence in him and will vote for him to become the next flag bearer. And some say, oh, did we see him jabbing the ex-president as he used to mount a podium and then jab him because he now wants to make sure that he's now grooming himself towards to lead the new Patriotic Party. Fine, that could be. But for political gains, but for in terms of business recovery, in terms of business point of view, I strongly believe that all what he has said has been said to us, has been said to us through his finance minister, has been said to us through his own boss, the president of the Republic of Ghana. So it was just a waste of taxpayers' money. Because all this Ukraine...
You're saying yesterday's event, or you're speaking generally? I mean, are you saying yesterday's event was a waste of taxpayers' money?
Yesterday's event was a waste of taxpayers' money. What was he coming to tell the truth? When media people were kissing me to ask on my expectation, what expectations would you think I would have looked for? I would have looked for an expectation where he said, okay, that 50% benchmark value reversal that government was reversing, that government took 20%, and we are raising issues in regards to figures and prices of goods and services at the market. He, as an economic head, is putting his foot down and saying, look, that 20% should reverse because at this point in time, Ghanaians are going through and government can't do anything to support them and will not also take that 20% to deliberately increase prices of goods and services in this country. So hence he's asking the finance minister to reverse it. I did not hear that. I wanted to hear him say, okay, that COVID-19 levy, that financial service levy at the port, he's asking the finance ministry to go to parliament and abolish those things, to bring down, cushion the business community and to cushion the final consumer as well, the ordinary Ghanaian. I was expecting him to have said that, prime rate moving from 14.5 to 17.5%, 17%, and asking commercial banks to increase, or to update their interest rate. This is not the right time. Already, Ukraine and Russia issue is actually bothering us. It's putting us at a stretch. So, of course, the Bank of Ghana should reverse that prime rate and should not ask commercial banks to increase. Already, the Ghanaians are running away from the banks to go and borrow because of the rate at which the interest rates are. These were some of the fundamental things I was expecting to hear. And of course, I was expecting to tell us how long with that $22 billion that the Bank of Ghana will be pumping to the system, which will bring, reduce the pressure on our city. As we speak, of course, someone will tell you that since they started doing that thing, the city is now 7-point-something to the dollar. But I can tell you, if you go to the black market, it's not 7-point-something. And the black market that is now determine the rate, the interbank rate for us. Not only the Bank of Ghana is now determine.
So it's a pretty tricky situation and quite a number of issues that we have to get into. But hold for me, Mr. Awingobit. Let me bring back Dr. Patrick Assuming. Doc, I know you have to take leave of us momentarily. So let me just do this. The Vice President also spoke about mobile money interoperability and how their efforts at integrating the system have led to our becoming the fastest growing mobile money market in the entirety of Africa. Did it then come to you as a surprise that the former or the Vice President mentioned the e-levy only once, 129 pages of delivery, and he mentioned the e-levy only once? In fact, he's on record as having said that he wouldn't support an electronic levy. Was it any surprise for you? Doc, please, you'd have to unmute. We've not heard anything you've said so far.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay. So I was alluding to the fact that yesterday one of the things I was hoping he would comment on was the e-levy. I think his silence on that matter is quite revealing in itself. I guess he probably isn't supportive of it. And when he has spoken in the past about not taxing Momo, I think he made the point that most economists have been making about the e-levy and the fact that this is really not a good tax to impose. But again, when he spoke about the digitization, I think that really explains where we need to be going in terms of raising more revenue. That is making sure that we are connecting our systems and that whatever business we are doing, we're able to find, we are captured some way, somehow. And if you are not paying your due, you'll be made to pay your due. So I think the fact that he didn't comment on the e-levy, for me, is an indication that he probably doesn't think that e-levy is the way to go, just like many other economists will say.
Any other concluding comments generally as you take leave of us?
Well, I think, we've heard all these measures to help us to get investor confidence, address government finances and all. I think ultimately, it's the Ghanaian people we should care about. And whether, if we are getting a lot of praise from international organizations and Ghanaians are suffering, it's of no use to us. So I think, as we are trying to face government finances, we should make sure that the bread and butter issues of Ghanaians are tackled. So it's not enough to say that we are growing at this pace. We want to know how many people have been lifted out of poverty, how many people are able to meet their daily needs. I think those answers are important. So going forward, I think, yes, the macro stability is important, but we have to ensure that it translates into the real living conditions of Ghanaians. And so in future, I hope that it's not just the macro numbers and the comparison of regimes, but we indicate that we are doing things that are improving the life of Ghanaians going forward.
Dr. Sumeng, thank you so much for joining the conversation this morning. We're very grateful for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Right. Let's take a quick stab at GUTA as well, because they have been out there talking a lot about the current economic situation and how the downturn is affecting their activity. Benjamin Yeboah is Director of Welfare with GUTA. Mr. Yeboah, a very good morning to you. Did you take any inspiration from the Vice President's delivery yesterday?
Well, good morning, my brother, and thanks for having me this morning.
Right.
Well, the thing is, what I saw was the sincerity to admit that, yes, we are having some crisis sort of now, which to me was important. Because if you don't even admit we are having problems, then it will be even difficult trying to find a way to solve it. And that to me was very important. And then, well, like you just said, in terms of currency, which is actually one of the main critical issues that is affecting business. But it's not just the city depreciation in terms of our businesses, but it's also even affecting the fuel in terms of it, coming down in price. And therefore, he tried to explain the reason why. I think he spoke about the late approval of the budget, which he thought was also quite damaging to them as a government. And then the low credit ratings of some financial institutions, that also affected the outlook of the economy. And then also the low investor confidence, which affected them. Now he is saying that likely the budget has been approved. They are working on a lot of things in terms of moratorium in cutting down on certain things, cutting down on expenditure, and also, more importantly, trying as much as possible to gain that investor confidence. And to him, it has started showing some signs. So yes, we can only be optimistic and hope that what he is saying will translate into reality for us to see things on the ground. Because until we see the reality in changing in terms of the city appreciating, in terms of fuel prices going down, in terms of selling indicators, well, it will be just what we've heard. So we will wait and see how what is said in terms of all the indicators will translate to something positive.
Right, and he did talk about the cedi's depreciation, even citing past figures compared to what we've seen now. But within the last time, I mean, between listening to Finance Minister, let me just take you back a bit, listening to Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta in terms of the economic reforms, listening to the SONA delivered by Mr. President, and listening to Dr. Bawumia, what are the changes that you've seen in terms of the cedi's, performance against the major currencies, and in terms of other dynamics, the cost basically of your members in terms of engaging in the activities they engage in? Are you seeing any improvement in your real living conditions or business conditions?
Well, putting all those three deliveries together, you realize they've come within short intervals. And therefore, it hasn't really translated into any, significant change or improvement per se. And therefore, nothing really much has changed on our business front. So that is the picture as we see now. Like I said, it's early days. He's successful. He's trying to boost that confidence in us for us to also have that confidence or that, positive mind, positive thinking. So the finance minister has said so, the president himself has said so in so that he has come to add more flesh. And therefore, let's see if truly, it's really going to translate into those upward indicators in terms of positiveness, as they are all indicated. We as traders can only just hope that, yes, it translates to, because if it doesn't, it really affects us. The more it affects our, our capital, it brings down, businesses and all. And therefore, we are really praying and hopeful that, yes, it does translate into reality. Otherwise, that would be a real problem. But now, it's really tight.
For you, Professor Gachi, very briefly on this bit, because I want you to proffer some solutions. If you were consulted, for example, it appears we have lost Professor Gachi on that beat. I would have wanted to have him take a bite at a few issues. But let me come back to you, Samson Asaki Awengobit. So you started by sharing your lack of enthusiasm in what the Vice President told us yesterday. But as far as the importers and exporters are concerned, what are you doing to sort of mitigate the economic situation on your membership? I mean, how are you managing within these economic constraints?
Then about the mobile money tax, the e-levy tax that the Vice President shy away from it. And not just that, the Vice President is a very smart guy. He ran away from the petroleum reduction, the 15 pesos reduction. He was mute on it. The 15 pesos, because he knows that it was insignificant.
You felt he ran away from it? I mean, they've been talking about it. Why do you feel he ran away from it? Because he didn't mention it?
Because he knew that 15 pesos per liter will not change the trotro fare, will not change the Okada fare. That one is running to work with heavy traffic, and want to get to office on time. You want to use Okada. The fares are still going up and up, and of course. So he ran away from the 15 pesos because he didn't touch it. Because if it was significant to the government, he would have mentioned it. And he knows that if you go and mention 15 pesos, the ordinary person on the street, the ordinary person who go in queue and vote, will be angry with him. So he ran away from the 15 pesos per liter reduction too, because he didn't mention any of that sort, including the e-levy as he said. Now the other aspect you are talking of is we have asked our people to monitor on a daily basis and adjust their prices based on that. Because if you don't, and you think that dollar is 7 point something, as the government is touting, you finish selling, then the dollar is 9 cedis. And the dollar, it's $1 to the cedi will be 9 cedis, or will be 8 cedis. And you wouldn't know. Because you can't, as they said, 2 days, 3 days time, then the thing went move back to 8 cedis. Just yesterday, I think it was back to 7. So it's ups and downs. So if you don't monitor the market and adjust your price accordingly, you will finish selling your stock, your ware, then you cannot even go back to bring another cargo. And that will be a cost to you. So currently, as the interest rate it is, and the government policies have been adjusted, everybody is now running away from the bank because of the high interest. Because Already prime rate was 40.5, and people were complaining about bank interest. Now you move prime rate to 70%, and ask the commercial bank to move up their interest rate to which one? To 27%, to 28%, or to 30%. Already, Ghanaians were borrowing between 20, 25, 26, 27, and maybe you get it. So we are skeptical. We are monitoring the dynamics, the ups and downs of the market, and based on that, then they have to adjust themselves. So we continue to monitor and advise them accordingly. And that is why your wife, my wife, your sister, my sister, yourself, myself, will go to market today to buy a commodity. Tomorrow you go back, and that same commodity price has changed.
The Vice President asked that we keep faith with the economic management team, with how they are, the measures they've introduced to ensure that our economy remains on a steady footing. And to quote him here, he says, we may not achieve everything we set out to achieve, but that must not stop us from trying. We must celebrate our achievements, big or small, and not seek to tarnish or belittle them for the sake of politics. I look forward to all of you playing a role in making our nation great and strong.
I have a question.
Right. What is your question?
I have a question for the Vice President. Why is it that he led the team that gave the benchmark values to the business community? At the time the finance minister was paying in reversing the benchmark values and were calling on him. Why was he mute? Why he was the same person who led in this economic management issues? He says he don't think more money should be taxed. When we were calling him, why was he mute? Why did he wait till the things damage finished before he comes to do damage control? That's why he did yesterday was a damage control. Because you have been speaking on certain things vehemently. And when your own government is bringing them back, and today I call on the Vice President, why was he mute? Why did he wait till this has to come, and we are not saying we should praise you? We cannot praise him. We cannot praise him when the Ghanaian other person is going to the market and the price of food keep on changing. How would they praise you? That is why we are sacrificing, of course. We were already sacrificing. It's not just yesterday's speech that will make Ghanaian sacrifice to say that we are in a challenging time. All of us have identified that we are in challenging time. But, you see, they should not be quick to push it to only the Ukraine issue. That's why someone is asking that why Ukraine and Russia invasion, our neighboring countries' currency are still stabilized, and our currency is running down. It's because of mismanagement. It's because of they have not put down their foot in the right direction.
Right.
And so he should be blamed. And if he's been blamed, they will sit up to do the right thing. His finance minister talks about no duty, no exit at MPS. We have raised issue. Remember yesterday he made mention of it. But we have raised issue that why should we keep dangerous cargo in the port? If you go to the MPS themselves, they will not like to keep dangerous cargo in the port. Because they should keep the dangerous cargo, because someone hasn't come to pay duty yet, then there will be explosions, then our port will burn, our port will be destroyed. No. We have said that those who force people, frozen food people, is being scanned at MPS, debtors are there, it's been transferred to GPH and other terminals. Why do you say we should keep them there and pay duty there? No one will pay duty at MPS and allow his cargo to go to GPH River Terminal or Golden Jubilee or any terminal outside the port.
Right.
If I pay duty, I'll take my cargo straight to my warehouse, straight to my cold store.
Right.
So they have to revisit again. So if he was speaking on issues, policies that the finance minister has announced, and then we from trading point of view have raised issues, he would have come to say, look, no. Already the interest rate is nothing to drive him about. So asking Commercial Bank to increase to up their interest rate is rather going to put them at the risk level. Because people will be shying away from the bank.
Mr. Awingobid, as we wrap the conversation, I'd like to hear from you. The Vice President says we must celebrate our gains, our achievements, big or small. You've spoken about all the negatives. You've spoken about all the sticking points. Was there any positive that you derived from his delivery yesterday? Is there any bright light as far as how it reflects on you, the importers and exporters? Was there any bright light from yesterday's delivery?
He only comes to give us hope that we should bear with the government and government will definitely come out from this struggle, so we'll come out together. I think that assurance coming from him, that I may take it. But I can tell you, if you go to the street and ask the ordinary person that at the end of the day, what the Vice President have said, what they deduce from, they will tell you that they are still looking at their packet. There is no any reflection on their packet. And so while the ordinary person will say there's no reflection on their pocket, and I'm speaking for a business community profits are running down. As we speak, there's another policy at the GRA, which is the flat rate Amendment Act. That is also an issue the business community are looking into. And so while the business community are complaining, I will complain. If the business community says business doing, I will come to say, I don't fabricate issues. But it's, all in all, what he came to do was to also let the people know that, okay, when others were calling that, well, he has run away, he is in Ghana here, he hasn't gone anywhere. And this is his position. But I can tell you, the ordinary people, as you are doing on your screen now, if you go and ask the lady smoking the fish and selling at the market, will tell you that the price, the one who's going to buy from that woman, will tell you that when they come and I put my price, they shy away, they run away. That is what we are talking about. We want to put the economic perspective, Ghana's economy is very lucrative in the eyes of even our neighboring countries. Our neighboring countries will not be enjoying more than we.
Okay.
As you said, Ghana is the gateway to West Africa. And you come to Ghana and our city, the depreciation is not the best drive home about. I strongly believe that he has to do something more.
Asaki Awingobit Samson, thank you so much for joining the conversation. Do we still have Mr. Yabwa? If Benjamin Yabwa is still with us, okay. Joining the conversation, those who joined us, Benjamin Yabwa, Director of Welfare with GUTA. We had Professor Gachi, who is in charge, Dean of the University of Cape Coast School of Business, Dr. Patrick Esuming as well, economist with the University of Ghana Business School. And of course, we had also joining the conversation, Samson Asaki Awingobit of the Importers and Exporters Association. We're done with this hurdle, but coming up next, we're going to be telling you about a book which will soon be launched. What should you know about it? Details right after the break. Well, thank you for staying with us. At this point, we're going to be talking about wrapped in platinum. I know we've got you thinking, right? You'll find out soon as we engage Nakoko Watson, Naughty, and author. Nakoko, a very good morning to you.
Same to you. Good morning.
Good morning. You have a beautiful name, by the way.
Really, thank you.
Wrapped in platinum.
Yeah.
And you're wearing a T-shirt that says exactly that.
Wow.
Let's start with your writing prowess. How long have you written?
Well, I can say that I started doing something small after secondary school or during secondary school days. Okay. But for me to put it out there, like publishing, it's just 2018 that I began to put it out there. That was the first day, the first time that something came out published, 2018 in August.
Right.
Yeah.
So since 2018, you've been putting stuff out there?
Yes. Bits and bits, sometimes on Facebook, yeah.
So is this the first time you're putting together a web like this?
No, it isn't. This will be the second.
So this would be the second time.
Yes.
All right. Tell us about the linkage between Blossom Quotes and Wrapped in Platinum.
Well, Blossom Quotes is the first book I published in 2018. Okay. And that one solely dealt with some, if you call it maybe wisdom nuggets or quotes, inspirational quotes, which were basically inspired by some of the things I experienced daily, maybe emotional, educational, but most of them were, call it, for want of a better word, biblical. Wow. Yeah, so they are inspirational quotes that I put together. Some of them are even on flyers that I share on WhatsApp and sometimes on Facebook. Wow. Now, Wrapped in Platinum is an anthology.
Okay.
Yes,
now you've got me all excited.
Yeah, it's a collection of poetry. I would say a collection of about 66 poems.
66 poems?
Yeah, and I'm still writing. Right. So probably when this goes through, in the next edition, I may add up as a review of it. So about 66, and then they are poems inspired by the things I see somewhere from friends. So whilst maybe I'm talking to you, you say something that you feel that it's so passionate, you have some passion for, I'll develop it into a poem and then dedicate it to you. So I have some poems that are dedicated to friends in the piece because they gave the inspiration.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. What you've mentioned that some of them are about your life, but what are some of the thematic areas? What are some of the things you focus on? Because I get the impression your writing then is didactic.
Exactly.
It's meant to convey a moral lesson.
Exactly, it does. So there's something about womanhood, there's something about childbirth. So I have a poem dedicated to one of my nephews, and what happened on the day on which he was born was that we delayed at home, and the mother had to give birth in the vehicle before we go to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So if I don't tell you what is in there, you wouldn't know, but the name of the poem is to the boy's name is called Peregrino, and that is his name. And I have a poem too called Experience. That one is for a friend of mine who also said she has experience in her job and other things, and she was sharing it that although she gets tired, it is worth it that she's doing what she's doing, not the monetary aspect of it, so it is also dedicated to her. Then during my secondary school days, I think there was a time where we were cleaning. I attended Agri
Memorial?
Yes.
Zion?
Yes. We are celebrating our anniversary on Saturday. Sorry to use this platform. So we were cleaning and doing all that, and then before we realized we had lost a mate of ours.
Oh.
And yeah, so I was there and I remembered her. Yeah, I remembered her and I said, let me do something for this lady. Most of us have forgotten about her, but I think I'll do something for her memory. So I have a poem for her as well. There's a poem about nature. There's a poem about someone sitting in Churchill early morning Accra hustle. When you sit in the Churchill and you're coming, you see a whole lot of things. Yes, a whole lot of things. So I call it Chalewati. That is the title of that poem. So what that person sitting in Churchill sees, he sees a gentleman dressed very well, you know, trying to drive to work, and then someone gives him a bad crossing, and you know, my people, sometimes no matter the shirt, they'll give you something with a thumb. Everything is captured there, so there's a careful addition of imagery in that. Yeah, so I have narrative poetry, I have some eulogies as well, but it is worth reading. Yeah.
So you basically get your ideas from everyday life?
Yes. Yes.
And I see some of them come from your own experience?
Yes.
The experiences of people around
you.
But you ever, like you said, you also have this incident of a colleague of yours back then whom you lost. But do you ever jump into other phrases? For example, politics. Do you have some of that in your book?
Yes, a little, but you know, you have to be careful when it comes to those areas, you know. But they are, you know, poems come in a way that each person may interpret it differently. So the way you read it, but the writer has the in-depth meaning of what he or she wants to convey.
Right.
So there's a poem that is called Seaman Jolly. You know, when you're in a relationship with someone overseas, what do you feel? You feel the love. But if that person is somewhere else, what do you feel? And the politics too. Yes, there are some poems related to politics, but it is covered. It is one of the reasons I have the title of the book to be called Wrapped in Platinum. So we have expensive words in there, written in lines and verses, but they are covered in precious words. That's the Wrapped in Platinum. Yeah.
Let's unwrap the platinum. Yes. What was your favorite part of this book? I mean, sometimes I know, as an author myself, asking an author to give you a favorite part of the book, especially as this one is an anthology, is like asking a parent to choose between their children.
Absolutely.
I know, I'm putting you in a very tricky spot.
I know.
But what would be your favorite part? I mean, sometimes there's a part that even when you go back and read your own book, it hits you like, it just gets you so warm inside. Is there any such part to this book, Wrapped in Platinum?
There's a part which adds to another part and adds to another. There's so many parts. As you said, I can't choose it. But then what gave me the inspiration to put all these things together was when I started writing for my course as a teacher, that I had to write the poems for my students to analyze. Then I saw the beauty anytime they submitted the assignments, and then I saw that, wow, so this is what people think about it. And so it gave me unique interest with each of them. I can't really point out and say this is my favorite part.
Right.
Yes.
But the penning this book, and maybe let's add blossom quotes.
Yes.
So what, how did it shape you, impact you, from Blossom Quotes to Wrapped in Platinum? How has this journey shaped you?
It has given me a kind of a relaxed mind when I have to write anything. Like not to stay in one area, but to widen my horizon. You know, if the first piece was an inspirational piece, and this one is an anthology, I'm asking myself, what would the third one be? That means that I'm unwrapping.
You can whisper to me.
I'm unwrapping myself.
You're unwrapping yourself. That would be interesting.
Yeah, you know.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, but I hope to do something, bring together women who have the dream to put out something, but not in a whole. So maybe you have something small that you want to write. I hope to bring them together. We collectively do something that would be not just for me, but for everyone who contributed.
That could be another anthology right there. So an anthology, but from different
That would
authors.
be maybe the little knowledge I have may be called a book chapter. So each person will be writing a chapter of their unique topics, and then together we put it out there, but they would all have credit for it.
One thing I know about writing, you have to have a passion for it, and but there are different dimensions to it. I mean, sometimes people talk about writer's block, for example, something I have not personally experienced.
Really?
But it appears people do go through these phases, even the best of authors. So I ask you, does writing energize you? Does it exhaust you sometimes? What's the experience like?
It does. You know, this writer's block thing, when you get the thought of writing something, don't put it down there quickly. You are likely to have it off. You know, it goes off, and then what you started gets stuck, and then you are unable to even keep the focus and then continue. Right. So what I normally advise my students when we are doing anything on writing is to learn how to write freely. You don't have to put in too much energy. Writing should be like a daily chore, like you are washing and you are singing.
I like the way you put a daily chore.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a chore, should it?
No, it shouldn't be, but something that you have a flair to do, even if it's a word that comes into your mind, put it down. If it's a sentence, you put it down.
Right.
Together you can put it in a whole, and then you would have what you want. Yeah.
If you could tell your younger self anything about writing, and here I'm also targeting not just your younger self, but other young people, especially women who may be looking at you and getting inspired by you, what would you say to yourself? What would you say to them?
I'll say, Koko, you should have started earlier. You should have taken yourself seriously at the beginning, because I didn't know that there was something in there. It was when I started sharing. I love to share. When I write something, I give it to people who I would say are very young.
Right.
If they understand, then it means anybody else would understand. But people fear, what if I give it to him and then he takes it like it? Yes.
That's always a fear.
Yes. So just share your ideas. If they take it, you would have another one, because you birthed the first idea that was stolen. Yeah, so you just keep sharing, you get more ideas from people, and whatever comes into your mind, write it. Where the ideas come sometimes, you know, sometimes in the kitchen, sometimes at places where you wouldn't want to mention, you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Yeah, so when it happens, just keep it in there.
Sometimes you find yourself dashing across your house simply because an idea has come, and you must put it down lest the way, especially with poetry,
the
way it comes, it's brilliant, but once you twist things, it's no longer the same.
It's lost. So the moment it comes, you have to, I mean, if it's even a word that you remember, just put it down.
Right. So to wrap the conversation, of course, we want to know about the book launch. We want to know about the book. How many pages are in Wrapped in Platinum?
So we have almost about 100 and something pages. I'm not so sure.
So just about 100 pages.
It's more.
What can people expect when they pick up this book, and when is the launch? Give us some details.
The launch is on Sunday, the 10th of April, 2022, at the SIC Mall, Makola.
Okay.
Yeah, you won't miss your way. And the thing is wrapped. I expect you to be there so that we unwrap it together.
Right.
That's all. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you very much,
thank you
for joining the conversation. And we want to see many more books from you.
Thank you. And I'll be looking out for yours as well. Wherever you be posting
I have
it.
I think I should share copies with you. And,
you should.
I'll get some copies of yours.
Exactly. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. And on the back of that, don't you forget to pass by the SIC Mall on Sunday to get your copies. But the management of the Multimedia Group would like to say a big thank you to the management of Wilma Ghana for donating the following items towards this year's Joy Easter Soup Kitchen. 15 bags of Fortune rice, 10 cartons of Frytol cooking oil, 10 cartons of Frytol seasoning. And we look forward to Pat and Iraba, I think, joining us to do the cooking. I'm sure you have some special bits in there. They're going to be joining us to do the cooking, and we're going to be sharing this Easter. So do join us. Let me also tell you about the Ghana Revenue Authority. In case you didn't know, the income of a young entrepreneur from some selected businesses is exempt from tax for 5 years. Any young entrepreneur engaged in manufacturing, information and communications technology, agro-processing, energy production, waste processing, tourism and the creative arts, horticulture and medicinal plants does not need to pay income tax. Note, you don't need to pay income tax on these activities for your first 5 years of operation. For a young entrepreneur engaged in business that enjoys an initial 5-year concession, benefits from the following applicable tax rates for an additional 5 years. Get ready. If you're in Accra and Tema, you enjoy 15%. If you're in other regional capitals outside of the 3 northern regions, you enjoy 12.5%. Outside the other regional capitals, you enjoy 10%. And in the 3 northern regions, you enjoy 5%. Now, for further clarity and information, you just go to your nearest GRA office. Ghana Revenue Authority, integrity, fairness, and service. But right before I go, let me just acknowledge Catherine Garments for this wonderful outfit today. When you see me decked in these beautiful garments every Friday, it's courtesy of Catherine Gordon. You can call her on 0277 580050. She's located in Medina New Road. On Instagram, Catherine_Garments. On Facebook, Catherine Garments GH. And on that note, it's a wrap. Do have a wonderful day. And let's connect same time next week on the AM show. My name is Benjamin Akako.